Before the sun rises over Cebu City, while most homes are still asleep, a small boy is already awake. His name is Miguel. Barefoot and thin, with a faded t-shirt that once belonged to someone else, Miguel walks through the narrow streets near Carbon Market. The smell of dried fish mixes with exhaust smoke. Jeepneys roar past. Life moves fast, but no one notices the boy standing quietly near the sidewalk. Until he sings. Miguel doesn't sing for fame. He sings because hunger doesn't wait. With a cracked old speaker and a borrowed microphone, he closes his eyes and begins softly. Wise men say, only fools rush in. It's Elvis Presley, a song his late mother used to hum while washing clothes for other families. Miguel doesn't know English very well, but he knows the feeling. His voice isn't trained. It's raw, trembling, and full of pain that doesn't belong to a child. Some people slow down. A few stop. Most walk past. Coins drop. Sometimes none. When night falls, Miguel returns to a small shack made of wood and rusted tin. Inside lies his grandmother, weak and coughing. She raised him after his parents died. She is his only family. Lo, may nahulog na beria, Miguel says softly, placing coins into her hand. She smiles, hiding her worry. Basta kumakanta ka, apo, may pag asa. As days pass, Miguel keeps singing, under rain, under heat, under rejection. One evening, a foreign tourist stops. Not for money, for the voice. The tourist quietly records Miguel singing, can't help falling in love. Miguel doesn't know he's being filmed. He sings like no one is watching. Like no one will save him, except the song. That video travels where Miguel never has. Phones, screens, countries. Overnight, millions hear the voice of a Cebu street kid singing Elvis with a broken heart. A local volunteer finds him days later. May gustong kumausap sayo, she says. Miguel is scared. He thinks he did something wrong. Instead, she shows him an email. America's Got Talent, audition invitation. Miguel can't read all the words. He only understands one thing. America. He laughs nervously. 8. Baka joke lang, yan. But it isn't. That night, Miguel sits beside his grandmother, holding the printed letter with shaking hands. Lo, pano kung hindi ako magaling. What if I fail? His grandmother touches his face gently. Anak, matagal ka nang nananalo. Buhay ka pa. Kumakanta ka pa. Miguel looks up at the stars through the holes in the roof. For the first time, the world feels bigger than Cebu's streets, and scarier than hunger. End of episode 1. Hook. Miguel packs his only shirt, not knowing if he will ever return the same boy, or if this dream will break him forever. Miguel had never been inside an airplane before. As it lifted off the ground, his small hands gripped the armrest, his heart pounding harder than the engine. Outside the window, Cebu grew smaller, until it disappeared into the clouds. He whispered a prayer. Lord, hawag mo po akong pabayan. America felt like another planet. The buildings were too tall. The lights too bright. The people too fast. Miguel clutched his worn backpack like it was his only shield. Inside it were his only shirt, a pair of slippers, and a folded photo of his Lola, taped together at the corners. Backstage at America's Got Talent, everything was loud, laughing contestants, cameras, perfect hair, shiny shoes. Miguel stood alone in the corner, barefoot again, his old jacket hanging loosely on his thin frame. Some contestants stared, some whispered, one even laughed quietly. Is he really auditioning? Someone muttered. Miguel lowered his head. He wasn't angry. He was used to it. A producer knelt in front of him. Nervous? She asked kindly. Miguel nodded. First time, everything. When asked about his song, he answered softly. Elvis Presley. The producer raised an eyebrow. Why Elvis? Miguel swallowed. Because, when I sing his songs, I forget I'm hungry. The doors to the stage opened. Bright lights hit his face like the sun. The audience blurred into shadows. 4 judges sat before him, powerful, famous, untouchable. Simon Cowell didn't smile. He barely looked up. What's your name? Simon asked flatly. M. Miguel Po, from Cebu, Philippines. And why are you here? Miguel's voice trembled. Because singing is all I have. Simon leaned back. Okay, let's hear it. The music started. Miguel opened his mouth, but fear stole his breath. His first note cracked. A few audience members shifted uncomfortably. Simon raised an eyebrow. Miguel felt his chest tighten. His mind screamed, "Uwi na lang ako." Then he remembered his grandmother's voice. "Basta kumakanta ka, may pag-asa." He closed his eyes and sang, not to impress, not to win, but like he was back on the streets of Cebu, singing under flickering streetlights, singing to survive. His voice grew stronger, deeper. Pain turned into power. The room changed. Whispers stopped. Eyes widened. Hands covered mouths. Simon slowly leaned forward. Miguel hit the next note, pure, aching, honest. A woman in the audience began to cry. By the final line, Miguel's hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. The song ended. Silence. For one long, terrifying second. Then the audience exploded into applause. Miguel stood frozen, tears rolling down his cheeks. He didn't know if he had done enough. Simon Cowell stared at him. Then quietly said, "Where did you learn to sing like that?" Miguel wiped his tears. Sa calzada po. End of episode 2. Hook. Simon pauses, looks straight at Miguel, and the next words out of his mouth will change the boy's life forever. The applause slowly faded, but the air inside the theater still felt heavy, like everyone was holding the same breath. Miguel stood center stage, shoulders shaking, eyes red. He didn't dare smile. On the streets of Cebu, applause sometimes meant nothing. People clapped, then walked away. This time felt different. Simon Cowell leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table. The room went quiet. "You know," Simon said slowly, "I've heard that song more times than I can count." Miguel nodded, afraid to speak. "But what you just did," Simon paused, searching for words. "That wasn't karaoke. That was truth." A murmur rippled through the audience. Simon looked directly at Miguel. "Where are your parents?" Miguel swallowed hard. "Pate na po." A hush fell over the theater. Simon's face softened. "And your grandmother? She's sick. She's the reason I sing." For the first time, Simon's voice cracked. He cleared his throat. "I'm trying not to get emotional here," he said, shaking his head. "But you remind me why this show exists." The camera cut to the crowd. Grown men wiping tears, women clutching their chests. Howie leaned forward. "Miguel, when you sang that note near the end, I felt like you were singing for your life." Miguel nodded, tears falling freely now. "Opo, kasi gano in po talaga." Sophia placed her hand over her heart. "You didn't perform," she said softly. "You survived in front of us." Then Simon did something no one expected. He stood up. The audience gasped. Simon Cowell, known for crushing dreams with a sentence, was standing, eyes wet, clapping slowly. "I want you to remember this moment," Simon said. "Because no matter what happens next, you belong here." Miguel covered his face and sobbed. Simon raised his hand. "Let's vote." 4 yeses came quickly. But Simon wasn't finished. He leaned into the microphone one last time. "Miguel, if you think this is the best you can do, trust me, it isn't. The world hasn't heard the strongest version of you yet." Miguel looked up, confused, hopeful, terrified all at once. "Salamat po," he whispered. As he walked off stage, the crowd rose to their feet again. Backstage, Miguel collapsed into a chair, shaking, overwhelmed. A producer knelt beside him and said quietly, "Your life just changed." Miguel thought of Cebu, of his grandmother, of singing under streetlights, and for the first time, he wondered, what if this dream is bigger than survival? End of episode 3. Hook. Fame arrives overnight, but with it comes pressure, fear, and a heartbreaking phone call from home that Miguel is not ready for. Miguel woke up to a phone that wouldn't stop vibrating. Messages, notifications, missed calls. Overnight, the boy who once sang for coins on the streets of Cebu was everywhere. TV screens, news headlines, social media clips shared millions of times. Street Kid Sings Elvis, moves Simon Cowell to tears. The voice from Cebu that broke the internet. People called him a miracle. But miracles are heavy. In the hotel room, Miguel sat quietly on the edge of the bed, staring at his phone. He wanted to be happy, but his chest felt tight. Every message reminded him how far he was from home. From his Lola. Rehearsals began immediately. Producers coached him on posture, breathing, stage presence. They were kind, but firm. This was no longer a street corner. This was competition. Again, Miguel. Louder. Again. Control the note. Again. Miguel nodded every time. Opo. But at night, when the lights were off, he whispered into the darkness. Lo, pagod na ako. One afternoon, his phone rang during rehearsal. It was a number from the Philippines. Miguel's hands started shaking before he even answered. Hello Po. A pause. Then a familiar voice, weak, trembling. Apo. Miguel froze. Lo. Kamusta ka Po. Her breathing was heavy. Each word sounded like it hurt. Nikita kita sa TV, she said softly. Ang galing galing mo. Miguel smiled through tears. Para sayo Po, yan. Then her voice changed. Apo. Hawag ka magalala sa akin. Miguel's heart dropped. Back at Po. Another pause. Ipagpatuloy mo ang pangarap mo, kahit anong mangyari. The call ended. Miguel collapsed onto the floor. That night, he didn't sleep. On live performance day, the theater buzzed with excitement. The crowd cheered when his name was announced. Cameras followed every step, but Miguel felt empty. As the music started, his mind wasn't on the stage, it was in a small shack in Cebu. His voice wavered. The audience sensed it. The judges exchanged worried looks. Miguel missed a note. His hands shook. His eyes filled with tears. Then, he stopped singing. The music continued without him. Gasps filled the hall. Miguel lowered the microphone and whispered, barely audible. Pasencia na Po. The audience began chanting his name. Miguel, Miguel. He looked up, confused, broken. Simon leaned forward, eyes intense, not angry, but concerned. Take your time, Simon said quietly. Miguel took a breath. He thought of his grandmother's last words. Kahit anong mangyari. He lifted the mic again, and sang the final lines with everything he had left. It wasn't perfect. It was real. The audience stood. Tears streamed down Miguel's face as he walked off stage, unsure if he had just lost everything. Backstage, a producer approached him slowly. Miguel, she said gently. There's something you need to know about your grandmother. Miguel felt his knees go weak. End of episode 4. Hook. The dream is at its peak, but the price may be more than a boy from Cebu is ready to pay. Miguel sat on a bench, his feet barely touching the floor, staring at the ground. The producer stood in front of him, holding a phone with both hands. Miguel, her voice was gentle, careful. Your grandmother is stable. The doctors did everything they could. She's watching you right now, from the Philippines. Miguel covered his mouth. A sob escaped before he could stop it. She told us to tell you something, the producer continued. She said, Kuminta ka ng buong puso, Apo. For the first time in days, Miguel smiled. That night was the finale. The lights were brighter than ever. The audience louder. The stakes higher. But Miguel walked onto the stage differently now, not as a scared street kid, but as a boy carrying millions of dreams on his shoulders. Simon looked at him. Are you ready? Miguel nodded. Opo. The music began. He sang, If I Can Dream. Every word came from somewhere deeper than his voice, from hunger, loss, love, and faith. His tone was steady. His pain became power. The boy who once sang for coins now sang for every child who sleeps hungry but still dares to dream. The audience cried openly. Halfway through the song, the camera cut to Simon Cowell. Tears rolled down his face. When Miguel hit the final note, the hall erupted. A standing ovation thundered through the room. Miguel dropped to his knees, overwhelmed. Simon stood up, clapping through tears. I've judged thousands of singers, Simon said, voice breaking. But very few change the room. You didn't just sing, you reminded us what hope sounds like. The votes were announced. Win or lose, it didn't matter. Miguel's life had already changed. Weeks later, Miguel returned to Cebu. Not to the streets, but to a small stage built in his community. His grandmother sat in the front row, smiling, alive, proud. Miguel held the microphone and said, Kung may bozas ka, hawag mong itago. Kahit maharap, kahit natatakat, kuminta ka. He sang again. And this time, the whole world listened. The end mic sparkles.